Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith, and right next to me, again and again, no chattering teacup. The teacup is again doing tea things, this time in Prague. At the time of this recording, of course, she's in Prague at a tea event. Our dear CEO is enjoying another horizontal life pause, keeping his ears and his eyes open. No, not open, because he's enjoying a horizontal life pause, of course. But here with me for this episode is a wonderful guest from across the pond. Hello and welcome, T.E. MacArthur, author, historian, artist. Welcome on our show.
Thank you, Edith.
It's lovely to have you on, despite all the technical problems we had before the recording of this. Don't worry. It can happen. It happens. Technology is only good as long as it works, isn't it?
It is. And it's fun to write about all the glitches in technology.
Oh, yes, especially in your book, A Place of Fog and Murder, which came out in September 2023. A most enjoyable book, I have to say.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to read. Your characters, especially your private eye, she was a special one, and she was a fantastic read. The complete story. And it says at the beginning it's dieselpunk. I wasn't aware something like that existed. I knew about steampunk, but I didn't know about dieselpunk. So, Tina, what can you tell us about this book? The screen is all yours.
Okay. Well, let me answer your question about what is dieselpunk. Well, everything started way back when about cyberpunk, and it was that post-apocalyptic, high technology, the world is falling apart sort of world that was created as a genre in literature. And the term punk was sort of used to say against the man, against government, against rigorous society and things like that. Well, a bunch of people got together and said, well, what if all that technology and all that attitude was thrown at the aesthetic and the politics and the society of the Victorian world? And that's where we got steampunk. And so, of course, that just couldn't be left alone. So now we have things like dieselpunk. And dieselpunk refers to the period between the world wars and kind of including a little bit of World War II, but a lot of World War I, when diesel power really replaced steam power. And I think they have atomic punk for the atomic period, the late 40s, 50s into the 60s. And I'm sure that term is now being added to everything. Diesel punk for me was what if kind of world of the 1930s. And I am a huge fan of Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, the Thin Man movies, the Maltese Falcon, film noir, some noir books. Some are a little more dark for me. I kind of romanticize the 30s a bit. But it was a chance for me to say, what if in the 1930s we had technologies that we didn't, and to write a sharp tongue, witty P.I., kind of along the lines of Raymond Chandler's type of P.I., but a woman, and kind of put a little bit of a feminist bent on it. And that's where I came up with Lou Tanner. And she hits the ground running with the slang and the and the nuance and all that stuff you would expect out of your average uh, pulp dime novel from all the big guys, coming along and they got their hats on and their big trench coats and their gun in their pocket and all that way of talking, but it's coming out of this pretty woman who looks like actress Myrna Loy. So it's a little incongruous. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create this world. But how do you bring the 1930s into a post-technology standing without making it not the 1930s? So that was the fun of writing that book and making a mystery.
And I got the impression from reading your book that all the things you mentioned now, for example, the characters of the Thin Man and Philip Marlowe and so on, they do exist in your world that you created.
I bring in sort of that pastiche, the idea that Philip Marlowe is somebody who's too grumpy in Lou's point of view, and he's down in LA and she's glad he's down there because, of course, all the detectives get together and swap notes. And of course, she's friends with Nick and Nora Charles of Thin Man fame. Because, of course, Nora Charles and she both look like the actress who played Nora Charles in the movies, Myrna Loy. And I thought, that'll be fun. Why not? So that's what I ended up doing, was sort of bringing them in to kind of give it a flavor of fictional reality.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And come to think of it, the only one that's missing now from the Austrian point of view, of course, is Hedy Lamarr.
Yes, but she would need, in my opinion, to be balancing the I'm this glamorous Hollywood star, yet this inventor, because she was brilliant.
Yeah.
She's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
She understood coding. She understood how technologies work, radio, and we have aspects of the internet now thanks to Hedy Lamarr. Some people don't realize that, but she patented some aspects of changing frequency. I think it was changing frequency. I should look it up because it's like over my head. That helped with World War II and getting rid of much of the clutter on radio frequencies and fooling the Axis powers. And it's now necessary for internet and Wi-Fi.
Yep.
Who knew?
I absolutely agree. And I usually ask it at the end of a conversation, but I have to ask you now, will there be more? Please say yes.
I am. Yes, I am. There will be. I am about 22,000 words into the sequel for Lou Tanner, and I have a really good direction for her right now. Fascinating things happened in 1935 San Francisco and 1936 politically, as well as interesting things going on in the world. So I thought, all right. And I do have a working title for it. It's called No Requiem for the Tin Man.
Ooh. Oh, sounds mysterious. Again.
Oh, good.
Absolutely looking forward to that. Because, like I said, I enjoyed it very much. And the things you mentioned, those little tidbits in your book, I was wondering, I didn't look it up, I usually do that, but I thought I'd ask you, the militia, for example, you mentioned in this political, rather, let's call them unsafe times, even in the United States. Was that a real thing or was that completely your invention?
It was my invention for its existence in the San Francisco area, but it was not uncommon for people, even today, to create sort of their own militia. And it will lead on to other aspects. There was, up until about, I believe it was 38 or 39, there was an American Nazi movement, a very prominent American Nazi movement. And they aligned themselves with American patriotism, saying, hey, we're not doing anything that is anti-American. We're right along with you. We worship at the feet of George Washington. And it was a very skewed approach. And yes, book 2 takes that one on as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because also the United Kingdom had their own Nazi movement. Yeah, it was the time, I suppose.
And it's, to me, very interesting to write about it, because I find that the more research I do and the more I'm having character-to-character conversations and certain situations come up, there are some very uncomfortable things that tie to politics and actions and events that are happening today. So there will be, I think for your average reader, they'll be able to enjoy the romp through the thriller and the suspense and just the fun of the fantasy of a what if alternate history. But there are going to be some things that might make them stop and go, hey, didn't I just hear about that in the news?
Yeah, that's true. And it's always interesting, at least for me, when I read, like you said, alternate history. Because there are quite a few books I've read because I find it fascinating. This, like you mentioned, this what if.
It's true. And it really does bring back that poor, abused, but so true saying of those who are ignorant of history tend to repeat it. And it is true. And we do, I think, as a species, go in repetition. I am currently, we're very cyclical, and I'm right now finishing up a steampunk series that I wrote many, many years ago, and I'm re-releasing because it's that right time. And you know, a decade or more later, I confess I was poking through one of the books and went, oh dear God, I wrote what? And well, I probably would do that anyway, whether a decade had passed or not. But this was a particular, yes, really, It's true. You will find every artist, whether it's with words or with paint or pencil or movement, they will be their own worst critic. And I looked at that and I said, it's time. So I'm revamping some things, but even there, I'm running into that I was writing about things that are playing out on the TV today. So we are very cyclical as a species. And with the internet and with high-speed communication, and you and I sitting here having this conversation, me in San Francisco, you in Vienna, it's amazing, it's astounding. But hopefully one of the outcomes is that when people can have these conversations across distances, across time, that we can actually start learning from errors and judgment of the past. Okay, I'm a romantic, I'm hopeful, but that is what I hope for, and that is an outcome I hope for the internet. We'll see.
Yeah, do you think at the moment there is more interest in steampunk and alternate history than it was, let's say, 5 years ago?
I don't know. I attend conventions at like comic book conventions and literary conventions, and even steampunk conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are, like the people, cyclical. There are ups and downs. They kind of follow a little behind the economy.
Mm-hmm.
If people are able to spend and get involved time-wise, then interest in various things go up. And if they don't have money to spend and they don't have the time, suddenly interest wanes. Not a great economic surprise there. Um, I think steampunk is sort of in a lull right now, but people who are genuinely interested in it really are and stay with it. They're
Mm-hmm.
really very determined fans. And I love them because they are always looking for ways to um, to improve on the genre as it is as a complete genre, not just a literary one. And I think maybe it's in a lull right now, but it will. I know it will come back because the aesthetic, Friday mouth, the aesthetic is so appealing. And I think diesel punk will have its day as well. Again, the aesthetic. There's always an interest when you see parallels in politics.
Mm-hmm.
People get interested in where have we heard this before. So I think there's room for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
People look back about 40 years in sections, 40 years and then another 40 years back. And they look there and they look for things like what was popular back then, what was the style. And you'll see a lot of vintage interest these days in things of the 30s and 40s. And I think the interest in books written about the period, whether historical or alt history, goes along with it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's mostly about the aesthetics, but also other ideas, supposedly. But your book isn't just alternate history. There's more in it. There's also a crime in your book. And of course, since Thena is a P.I., there has to be a crime. And this crime itself, was there also some sort of parallel in the real world? Or where did the idea come from for this certain kind of crime?
Well, I will confess that as a writer, and as my hat is falling off, I'm going to set it aside. As a writer, I am what I call a plotzer. I start by plotting out my storyline and really thinking everything through and having details and points I want to hit. And then I suddenly find myself pantsing it from there, going by the seat of my pants. And so when I got near the end, I had intended to go left. And truthfully, the book seemed to be going right. So I just kept writing until I realized, oh, this is the proper end. This is where I'm going. And it had to have been somewhere in the back of my head that this is the conclusion that needed to be there. There were a few clues that I realized needed to be laid further back in the book. So I went back and made sure they were there, because we're not going to pull a Miss Marple. We are not going to suddenly come up with last minute clues. You know, fair is fair. You have to let the reader know that the clue was there. You don't have to tell them it's a clue, but you have to lay it there earlier in the book. You have to let them know. It's not fair to, suddenly go, oh, well, I detected the smell of an exotic plant none of you have ever heard of because I just made it up. And that's the clue to why that character who was introduced 2 chapters ago is actually the killer. No, you can't do that to the reader. It's not fair. It's not right. people read because they want to see if they can figure out what's going on before the end of the book. And there's some satisfaction to going, I knew it wasn't that person that they kept saying it was. So, yes, there is a crime. It's a very, very 30s kind of crime. And there's a lot of culture involved in the book. So I have to also introduce you to the culture of the 30s, the way that this culture affects this new world, because this new world includes automatons and robots and automated taxi service and the way people react to it, but they have to react to it not as modern day people, but as 1930s people who were becoming unionized, who were kind of looking for people to blame for their problems coming out of the Depression. So you have a lot of things going on. And I had to be a little careful about where the crime was committed and where everybody was. So I managed to snag a 1935 Beacons map, a moving map of San Francisco. And me and a friend hopped in his car and drove all over San Francisco, which I thought I knew fairly well. No. I'm following this road on this map and going, yep, it's there. Oh, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it. And it goes up this hill and it's wonderful. And it's like the road on the map goes through, except for the fact that there's a cliff at the end of this block. And the next block starts at the bottom of the cliff and goes on. And somebody from San Francisco would have called me on it. Somebody who knew that neighborhood would have called me on it if I had not noted that. If I had said she drove straight through, somebody would have called me on that. And shame on me. I live here. I should know better. Knowing where things used to be or how far the cable cars used to go in the 1930s, knowing what kind of buildings were in what places. Where was the morgue in the 1930s? Beautiful Embarcadero centers are part of the skyline now, and so is the big pyramid. Well, they weren't there in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I suppose you do enjoy research.
Oh, I love research, but that is a rabbit hole. I can disappear down and just keep sampling the eat me, drink me, eat me, drink me. I could do that all day long and never get a word written. So I have to be very careful. But it was fun driving around San Francisco.
Yeah, that's the thing with all authors that write historic novels, isn't it? I mean,
it's okay to write about a place you've never been or about something you don't personally have knowledge of, but you have to do your research. If you don't live there, find somebody who does or get good maps. We have satellite pictures of the ground. We have Google Maps and street maps, and there's no reason why you can't understand that somebody can't cross a park because it turns out there's a building there now. Or maybe now you say they didn't walk around the building because there's a park there at the time period. But yes, you can do it. I don't believe in that writer's advice of only write what you know. No, write all sorts of things, but be aware that if you're writing about something you don't know.
Yep. And may I ask about your female characters? Because we have Lou, we have her friend, and the friend who's becoming her personal assistant. I wouldn't call her secretary because she isn't a secretary. She's more than a secretary, and she's even becoming more than a PA. She's also a very interesting character, a very resourceful woman, by the way. We have the victim. We have the victim's mother. And let's say, although on the surface, She seems to be a woman who has everything, but underneath, she is a woman I wouldn't invite to dinner.
She was sort of a conglomeration of several, not villains, but bad characters from several movies and a couple of books. I sort of loaded them all together. And I guess she was my statement about people who live only to have parties and be rich. That they don't extend themselves to find other aspects of their life. People have money, fine. People enjoy having parties, that's great. But if that's it, if you live in a society that gives you permission to just simply sleep in all day and whatever, and that gentleman's lifestyle and the 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 society that was built around that thinking was still very much intact in the 1930s. If that's all you've got, who or what are you? And a lot of what was said at the time in writing and in the movies was that it led to boredom, and boredom led to cruelty. So I kind of let her be that aspect. It was a good statement to make, I thought. She just sort of had the right, I wanted to put into her the right vibe of that vampy bad girl. It was needed. It was very much needed. Whereas Lou's assistant is a friend of mine, actually, who has got all the moxie in the world, and she just is able to work her way through any problem. She can do everything. And now she's a mom. And so she's dealing with being a mom and a wife and a nurse, and she's doing all these things, and she is just incredible. And so I really wanted her as the basis of the character. I shouldn't say she's the character. I put a lot of things in there that make the character very, very much her own. But that was the foundation. My friend was the foundation, and she's also, my friend is also very much into the 30s aesthetic, and so it was. I have that picture in my mind, and so I can just sort of write the script, the movie script of what conversations would be like.
Oh, well, splendid. I mean, she is likable. She's very likable. Absolutely.
So is my friend.
Absolutely adorable. Unlike, like I said, the mother of the victim. She's a nasty piece of work, but it was intended. Like you said, you have to have her.
Yeah, you have to have somebody who is just not right. No, just bad.
Yep.
And there are always people like that. Everywhere you go, there's somebody who's just not right. And it's okay to have that. And I found that I was trying sometimes to apologize for her, and I had to stop and back up and go, nope. And one of my first drafts, when I sat down with a friend of mine to kind of, do a little developmental editing and to talk to him and go, what do you think? What do you think? And why is Lou trying to quit smoking? And I said, well, because I don't want to encourage smoking. And he said, they know it's the 30s. Everybody smoked like chimneys. And I went, oh, you're right. So Lou just smokes to her heart's content because it's the 30s and that's what people did. Exactly. And I don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I think probably a pack a day kind of gal.
probably. Yeah, they smoked and they
Probably.
drank.
Oh yeah, she definitely drinks. She definitely is up with Nick and Nora on that one.
Yeah,
I just thought
well,
it was sad that they
no.
took that out of the characters in the movies. The first two they did all the drinking and whatever, and then after that they sort of calmed that down. They gave him a kid and no more drinking and you be nice, and it's like, no, they were fun. Let them enjoy themselves, for heaven's sakes.
Just for once, please,
Yes,
indeed. I mean,
they went out carousing. They had a good time. Yeah.
yeah, what's wrong with that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, compared to the victim's mother, your gangster seems cuddly.
If he was ever going to fall in love with somebody, there had to have been something about him that was willing to let go of the gangster and fall in love.
Mm.
And I just decided that he needed to have that. He needed to not be the stereotype. Now, the mother was definitely a stereotype, and that was fine. She needed to be. But he needed to be a little bit different, just a little bit off. His henchman, on the other hand, could be absolutely cut with a die, stereotyped thug. But I wanted him to have just a little bit something different. He could be bad, 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 bad. Oh wait, I fell in love with the wrong person, but he fell in love.
And your cops, the good cop and the bad cop, they are in your book on a different level. How would you describe their relationship and their relationship with Lou?
Benny feels like her uncle. Benny is sort of the beat cop who got promoted. And he's always going to be the beat cop, no matter what he does. And I've met guys like that. They're doing the fancier paperwork. They're doing the different style of work at working within vice or homicide, or any kind of crime scene investigation. But they're still at heart the beat cop. That's Benny. Our bad boy never was a beat cop, even when he was a beat cop. He was sort of that person who feels like the whole world was, the weight of it was put on his shoulders, and that's just that. And I wanted them to be sort of opposites. And sometimes those opposites will attract and work together very nicely. I don't think they did so much so for Lou, but you can imagine that maybe handling other cases they might have. They razz each other a lot. They give each other grief a lot. And I think they recognize the flaws as well as the strength in each other. I haven't written it yet, but I haven't decided how the whole event of book one is going to affect character in this case. How are they going to take it? You know,
Mm-hmm.
how will the survivor take it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
and in the second book, just asking because I'm wondering, will there be more about her family, her parents, because she's questioning the events that happened to her parents. Will we learn more about that as well in the next one?
There will be more questions, but I'm kind of saving the what happened to her parents for the third book.
Oh. Even more to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely. I am hoping to make this a trilogy.
Mm.
But the questions that she's going to be looking at right now are, in the second book, are survival. And if she has what it takes when the going gets bad. She's kind of in a position in the first book where many of the pieces have fallen fairly well. Not perfectly, but fairly well. But one of the aspects of noir, and this is a touch noir, one of the aspects of noir is that it's usually about a very flawed person. And yes, Lou is flawed, but it's usually their flaws or their downfall. And they're kind of in a bad place to begin with. And it just gets worse. They're sort of people who make bad decisions and keep on making bad decisions until the bad decisions take them down. Lou is not that way. Lou was in a reasonably okay position. She's got her license. She's got a place to live. She's got a place of business. She's got a personal assistant. And she's got a case. And she's solved some of the issues around her. In the second book, I want to challenge that. Can she remain a good person doing good things if all of that support structure is falling away? Or will she go the way of a noir type character and just go ahead and get dirty for the sake of survival, or will she rise above? How bad does it have to get before she throws in the towel and does whatever it takes to get by?
So more or less, what does it take for a good person to do bad things?
Yes.
Losing everything, but I hope she's not losing her furry overlord.
No, not my cat is a fixture. We must have not my cat.
Absolutely.
The first time somebody told me that he had named this neighborhood cat that just wandered in, he opened the door one day. He heard he and his wife heard meowing, and this cat just strolled in, got into their parlor, curled up on the couch, looked at him, meowed, and went to sleep. And now this cat comes over, they feed it, it sleeps on their bed, and in the morning, and it's not a stray. They know who owns the cat, but they named it Not My Cat. And I laughed so hard, I couldn't believe it. So I used the name. I admit that I stole that directly. I have a black cat who is asleep over there, and I really love cats. I love dogs too, but cats are really my thing. And I just had to have a cat in there. Not because that's supposed to be the rule of writing mysteries these days. You need to have an animal in there. That's for coziness.
Yeah. Yes.
But I had to have that in there. And I try to keep humor in the book whenever possible. So
yeah, and it's fun. It's fun to read about that. Those little tidbits. Make it great. But
Definitely.
I absolutely agree with the cat. That's why we have a CEO who is a feline.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Because we
Best
know,
people in charge.
yeah, exactly. We know what is good for us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant when I said life under the paw. If you know what's good for you, you do what your cat demands. And may I also ask this combination or this influence? On the one hand, we have politics as well, and we also have economy in your book. Merging those two, and those two who keep keeping in touch and influencing each other one way or the other, because loose clients is someone who has a company, who is a CEO of a company, and he's also deeply entrenched in some goings on in politics, more or less.
I honestly believe that we can't separate politics and economy. I I do some improv acting, and I was asked to do an event for a prominent politician, national politician, and they had me dressed up as Martha Washington. And I was rather surprised. I thought it wouldn't surprise me, but here were all these people writing $20,000 checks for this landmark restoration project they had brought in this national politician for. And the way that the actors, we were all in costume, we owned the costumes, we brought ourselves there. We were basically, you don't speak unless you're spoken to. Um, Stay in character all the time. Don't touch the food. Do not go up to the politician. Blah blah blah. Having secret service around checking on everything. They're eating shrimp cocktail, and we were given little crunchy bars or whatever behind the scenes. And it was just the way people spoke and the way they did things and the way they looked at us. And it was very strange working with people with a great deal of money. It's a whole different, I don't know that I've ever truly grasped it even then. And the money goes hand in hand with the politics, because even back then you can't hang on to your money if you don't politic heavily. And it's a very sad thing. We talk about getting money out of politics. It'll never happen. At least I don't think it will in my lifetime. And it's, the more you have, the more you have to lose. And so you want to get everything socially, politically, security-wise to protect what you have so that nobody else can take it.
But I read somewhere a good piece of advice. I can't remember who said it or where I read it. It said, be nice to the people you meet on your way up, because you might meet them again on your way down.
It's perfect advice. It's fabulous advice. It's probably the most ignored advice out there, which is too bad. There are a handful of people who do pay attention to that and understand, but not enough. I think because surviving in that different world it requires different skills. You're so busy surviving there, you're not noticing what's going on elsewhere. It's an opinion. I will say that because it's an opinion and it's based on my experiences, I will allow for somebody to argue completely, and I will hear them out and be willing to change my mind on that. But right now, the anecdotes that I've experienced, it's another world. I was not in Kansas anymore. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. One wonders if it is completely different from, let's say, old money in case of people who have titles. For example, I come to think of the United Kingdom and, like, let's say, events at Buckingham Palace and so on.
I would say yes, and in doing research for my steampunk book, you do find that there is a difference between the nouveau riche and old families. Um, it was hard back in the Victorian age and the Edwardian age for people to be able to break that barrier and be accepted. You really had to work on it. There is a series out now called The Gilded Age, and one of the running dramatic plot points is this woman who is new money and how she's not entirely accepted because she doesn't know the rules based on lifelong learning that the others received because they're old school.
Mm.
You know, they grew up knowing these things. They didn't even have to be taught. It was just there, and they lived it every day.
Yeah.
So there's a little of that.
And come to think of things I've heard from people who had contact with old money, so to speak, there is this understatement. They do not flash, usually they do not flash, at least here, their money. They dress like the average person. They do not wear their expensive watches. They do not wear their expensive, I don't know, shoes or clothes. It's a bit the understatement. Because they know who they are.
There's every manual how-to book on how to become rich or how to become an entrepreneur usually starts with you have to believe in your heart of hearts that you can be rich or be an entrepreneur. And I have to agree to a certain degree. Same with being an author. You have to stop thinking of yourself as I'll get around to writing that book kind of person. I am an author and I'm finishing my work and then finish it. There is a mindset involved, and it is a very solid, confident, unquestionable mindset. So I would agree with that. I would agree with that. There's never a moment where anybody's having to prove something. Why should they have to prove it to anybody? They don't need to flash anything. If you look at especially, say, Dickensian period, UK and America, the middle class was always trying to show themselves as being better than they might be or how they were perceived. And so they would wear the fancier or do the fancier or have the fancier and show it off. But that's not what the upper classes were doing. They didn't need to prove it to anybody. So same kind of thing. And yes, this was sort of also part of the thinking behind the characters that were of the San Francisco social society. You know, the mother, the daughter, the stepfather,
And
and their
speaking of
friends.
and speaking of believing who you are and believing what you do, what would be your advice to any other aspiring author out there?
I would start with making a decision. The decision has to be, are you an author or are you somebody who's just writing? And neither of those is something to be looked down on. If you're just writing because you enjoy writing and you're not really trying to create a published means of reaching out to people, it's wonderful. Go for it. But if you want to be an author, you have to really start thinking like an author. And it means finishing things. You don't have to be vicious to yourself. There's a wonderful book by Chuck Wendig. He wrote this book after years of writing books about get yourself in your seat. Do this. You must write, 500 to 1,500 words a day. You have to do this. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Really hardcore words about being a writer. And then all of a sudden he realized, oops, maybe I was going the wrong way. And he wrote this marvelous book called The Gentle Art of Writing. That's the name of it. And it's a game changer for any author, whether you've been published or not. And it's great advice about getting started or kind of rejiggering your career, your hobby, your serious hobby. And it makes you slow down and be kind to yourself so that your writing can come flowing from you naturally. It won't come out of wounds unless you coax it out and you want it to come from wounds. Self-inflicted wounds are not the way to get your writing to come out. Another thing is to join organizations. Now, when somebody told me that about a decade ago, I had a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, no, I was picturing cocktail parties and I loathe them. No, don't make me go to a cocktail party and do meet and greet. Nah. But along came the pandemic, and all of a sudden there was this group called Sisters in Crime, and they were doing online classes and Zoom meetings. And the next thing I knew, I joined and I was having the greatest time. They had a cocktail party once a year, and did a couple of things, but I found myself making friends and doing these write-ins where everybody gets on Zoom and you're sort of held accountable by being online with people, and you can ask questions, or you're just writing away for an hour and everybody's on there, and it's comforting. It's like being in a room with people and getting some work done. And you get classes that are so good. And now I'm president of my chapter, the Coastal Cruisers. And I've joined other groups. I belong to the Horror Writers Association because I wrote some paranormal thrillers. I am going to conventions and meeting authors there. So it's not the cocktail party where you have to go and network. The networking is natural, and there are groups out there that will fit what you need. There's a paranormal romance guild. There's a Gothic, I forgot the name of them, Gothic something. And there's the Southwest Writers Association. I belong to them because one of my books is set in the Southwest. Things like that. And they're lovely people. And there are writers get-togethers and all sorts of things. And they will get you writing because you will just be so encouraged and inspired. And they'll help you figure out where you're going, what you're missing, what do you need. I have grown more as a writer in the last 4 years than I have in the 40 years prior of college and just sitting there and playing with it and trying to get things done, and even publishing. But in the last 4 years, I have learned so much. So that's what I would offer.
Again, another plus side of the pandemic then.
Yes. I have fallen in love with Zoom and its equivalent.
And the first group you mentioned, is that where you met Lisa?
Yes, that's where I met Lisa. And it was Lisa and Anna Manwaring who both introduced me to Indies United Publishing House, who is now my publisher. So, hurrah! I have this amazing network, this community through Indies United. So, I was independently published before. That's the new phrase for self-published. I was independently published before, and now I have a nice mark on my books that says publisher. It's not supposed to matter, but it matters. But it's not supposed to.
Yeah, and there's a lot out there, or a lot of authors out there, which are very good and who do not get enough promotion.
It's true. Lisa and Anna and I are going to a Barnes & Noble on March 9th, and we're going to
I saw that.
go there and sell, and we're going to shake hands and meet people, and I've got a steampunk convention coming up, and the Bay Area Book Festival, and the Powerhouse Comic Book Convention, and there's all sorts of opportunities coming up. So I get to meet people, and it's very odd. I'm an extroverted introvert. If I don't know the people who are at the party, I'm going to go find the cat. It's true. No, small talk I don't get. Talking about books, talking about methodologies for writing. Oh, hey, I'm on board. You want to talk about engineering or the latest math thing or watching, binge watching the most popular shows. Okay, you got a dog? I'll go take care of the dog. I'll be over there.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay. And that's why there's now Zoom. We can do book talks all day long. Across a continent, across an ocean. And I've asked you that at the beginning. Like I said, I don't usually do that, but I had to ask your plans. You touched upon them, but I read that in March there will be another book out.
April.
Oh,
it will be.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. This is the re-release, and I completely revamped it. And it will be April 19th, and it's called The Doomsday Relic, and it's a steampunk cliffhanger. My steampunk books are done like Saturday morning serials. They end on a cliffhanger. So after about 4 of these little mini novels, the story stops and you get a breather, and then we pick up next, and you get 4 little cliffhangers. Well, this is the start of a new one, and it's called The Doomsday Relic, and it has to do with my favorite steampunk lady, Professor Letty Gantry. She is a volcanologist, which takes her all over the world. And it's set in the 1880s. So there she is, swishing by in her bustle gown with her pick hammer and her shoulder bag, and yes, and her very enigmatic Civil War veteran in tow.
Ooh, a sidekick.
Oh yeah,
don't we love them? Don't we love them? Ah, splendid. And I got the impression that the volcano lady is connected to the Gaslight Adventures of Tom Turner.
Yes, and that's the enigmatic Civil War veteran, Tom Turner.
Oh.
And what had happened was I wrote these novels way back, a decade or more ago. And I have to admit, mistake of early publishing, they were kind of thick. And they were, I had 2 books that were cliffhangers and another 2 books that were cliffhangers. So I've been breaking them up into nice, neat, smaller tomes with new covers and a little cleaning up the formatting, and I'm re-releasing them. And I plan to have those done before summer is out, probably before summer starts with any luck, so that people can get those in as they wish. But in between those novels that could have been, Tolstoy thick, in between those, I decided to do just a little quick set of novellas, and I focused on Mr. Turner and his adventures of trying to get home from Java, basically the East Indies, right after Krakatoa, and now Krakatau, not Krakatau, and trying to get home alive to the United States. So he has adventures in the Kingdom of Hawaii, in the Barbary Coast in San Francisco. He makes it to Denver, but gets waylaid and goes down to Tombstone. I have friends who live in Tombstone, so I got to sit there and take notes when I was visiting them and living in for a weekend or so in their beautiful little 1880s house, and was there for, I think it was Wyatt Earp days. Yeah. So once I was done doing my writing, we all put on our Wild West gear. I was in a bustle gown. We went out and sashayed down the street, along with a lot of other people who were in costume.
Sounds
like I said, I'm an introvert. In a costume, and I'm fine.
Yeah, it sounds great. Absolutely. And Thena, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
I am writing a sequel right now to, also, whenever the mood strikes me, I write on one or the other. I'm writing a sequel to The Skin Thief, which was my paranormal thriller set in the Southwest. I'm writing the sequel to that, and it's becoming part of the Pretorius Paranormal Agency series. I'm working on the sequel to the Lou Tanner series, and getting ready to get all the steampunk books out and available in their glory with new covers and in a lovely 5x8 format and a little more broken up so that they're a tad more digestible and you don't need a Sherpa to bring your latest volume along with you. And then I'll see what's going on. I've got some conventions and I have some book festivals, and somewhere in there I will actually stop to breathe.
Yeah, sounds like you will be busy in the near future.
I hope so.
Wonderful. And please, when you meet Lisa, give her my best.
I will. I need to have lunch with her. She is a dear, and she's what set us up, and I'm so grateful to her. And I really want to thank you so much. This is fun. And I hope you get a chance to talk to Anna Manwaring. And there's so many other lovely people that I'm sure you're getting a chance to just chat with. So send me those links. I want to hear everybody. It's always exciting. Oh, I hear from everybody.
Just tune in on our channel, be it via Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can get us. I will get you the link to your episode and the general link as well. There have been a lot of indie authors on our show, and it would be fun to have an East Coast, West Coast conversation maybe one day, because we've met a lot of indie authors on the East Coast, North Carolina, and also Florida. So it would be fun.
Sounds good.
Yeah, doesn't it? Sounds good. Authors are always happy to talk about the books, I know.
Oh, God, yes. Especially with somebody who so obviously read it.
Always. I give my best. I always try my best. Being prepared and enjoying the books I would love to read, because I always love to read. There's
I
nothing
can tell
better.
by your background.
Yeah,
There's a library back.
Well, dear listeners, this background is not all what it seems, but judging from all the pictures, our listeners do know that there is a real version of that downstairs, because I'm in the attic. And there is no free space. In the real one, there is no free space.
Aha!
There is book behind book. 2 rows, actually.
Wow.
There's not enough space for the books, because I can't stop buying books. I have to admit that.
Well, as they say, can you ever have too many books?
Nope, never.
Nope. No.
Whose
No,
idea
I'm
is that?
reorganizing everything, which is why it's a disaster behind me.
There's nothing like too many books. I mean, seriously? Never,
Even my
ever.
cat likes.
No. So thank you for joining me, for making this happen. It was an absolute pleasure. And I will meet you shortly in the green room.
Excellent.
For behind the scenes chat. Meeting you shortly. Dear listeners, we hope you did enjoy this episode as much as my guest and I did, and we hope you'll tune in again for another episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you would like to support us, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. Until next time.